Hello y'all, this is 1000 Week Reich, a mod for Hard Spy and Force set in a war where the Axis won World War II that attempts to bring in a sense of grounded and gritty realism. Instead of beginning in the 1930s, this mod's start date is on the 1st of January 1952. We're going to play as the French state, also known as Vichy France, who is struggling to recover from their loss in World War II. The country is a dictatorship, but cries of liberty, equality, and fraternity are heard throughout the streets, and the weak army of France is unable to keep down dissent. Our initial leader is Maxime Weygand, and our national spirits are the Second Armistice, incompetent government, war reparations, and divided military. And all of these are pretty bad, I'm not going to lie about that. The army isn't too bad, but considering we're France, it could be a lot bigger. And we do have a few tank divisions, at least. This mod does change around the tech tree a little bit. You can see we have anti-tank weapons now, and taking the place of motorized is mobile infantry, I think. The armored vehicles have changed also. We have things like personnel carriers, and the artillery has been expanded upon greatly, while in the aircraft department we have access to helicopters and light aircraft, and larger aircraft like bombers have been broken up into their own separate category. We also have a section called Nuclear and Advanced Weapons that has missiles, nuclear, chemical, and biological technology. Looking at the commanders of the army, we have plenty of generals and a single field marshal. Sadly, we have a couple demilitarized states in the northern part of France with German divisions watching over them. Let's start our focus tree with the focus, the state of affairs. This mod does have some new mechanics in the form of the GDP that shows a list of countries by, of course, their GDP value, and the United Nations, which starts with members already and 4 nations acting as the Security Council. Reforming the government, the French state in the past has extensively cooperated with Germany, but under new leadership, the government ultimately wishes for us to have industrial independence and neutrality between Germany and its enemies. King George VI passes away, and his daughter Elizabeth II assumes the title as the new monarch. Explosive news! The German Reich announced the success of its first ever atomic bomb test. The state of Spain declares war on the Kingdom of Morocco, who has chosen to go the direction of pro-independence following some diplomatic debacles. A few days after the start of the Moroccan War, independence protests in Algiers have popped up, so that's not good for us at all. The Algerian War of Independence has begun. We can switch to either the Republic of Algeria or the pro-France Oran Free State, or just watching horror, which we will do. Let's send some assistance to Iran by giving them some infantry equipment. They probably need it. There is a new player in the Algerian War, and we meet with a representative of the Reich who is weary of our push toward independence, which is true, but we must maintain a facade of friendliness to him. In Scandinavia, there is a German coup in Norway. Italy is denounced by Britain after a coup in Egypt puts it under the Italian sphere of influence. The war in Algeria is over. Our side lost completely, and the Republic of Algeria has emerged as the victor. The resistance has haunted France for decades, following reports saying that they have infiltrated the French government. We respond to this by purging part of the military staff so we lose manpower but gain base stability. The national focus, restart the factories, is completed, and right after that we have to deal with a general strike led by the workers. They're going to be on the moon by the 60s at this rate. In the news, Germany has successfully launched a manned suborbital spacecraft, but unfortunately for them, the pilot died in the re-entry process. Illegitimate Free France joins the Toronto Accord. Anger from French state politicians ensues. Handling the strikers, we can either put them down or negotiate with them. Let's just negotiate because I don't see any wars on the horizon, and we can just wait out the strike agreements. Continuing down the focus tree, we'll do Southern Development, reduce German influence, and the corridor line, which should go fine unless Hitler dies. In Britain, a prime minister resigns and they get a new one. The death of Hitler national focus is bypass, so that means the Fuhrer is dead and we're reforming the officer corps. Let's hire new talented officers. After Adolf's death, there is coincidentally celebration throughout France to keep our German handlers from freaking out. We need to print anything newsworthy we can find. At a cocktail party celebrating the longevity of the French state, a lone gunman shoots at Weygand. We can choose to have him dodge death or get hit. Let's choose the second option. With the death of Chief Maxime Weygand, that completes a national focus. Shortly after the death of the leader, the capital is engulfed in riots, which cause the destruction of stores and the burning of barricades, and there is a news event about the assassination of Maxime Weygand. The disorder is spreading all across France. These riots are getting out of control. The grand funeral of Adolf Hitler takes place, and there's not many foreigners attending it, notably, and the French Revolution has begun with open resistance against the French government. The Resistance Congress event lets have democracy prevail and prevent the leftists from hijacking the Congress. The goal of the revolution is the creation of a new French Republic and end the French state as it is known. A Slavic revolt causes a Reich commissariat to be set ablaze, as you can tell by all the war declarations that are going on right now. And the French Republicans launch an assault on Vichy, the old administration hub of the French state. The government forces will retreat and lose the city. Revolutionary forces march into Vichy and the city falls to the rebellion. National morale has plummeted and thousands of soldiers are defecting to the other side, while civilians are becoming more sympathetic to the rebels' cause. The Reich Commissariat collapses in Ukraine, and in Africa there is an Ethiopian uprising. For conflicts in Europe, we have whatever is going on in Eastern Europe, and in the Balkans, there is fighting going on there. Revolutionary victory. The resistance has won. We complete 2 focuses, the French Revolution and democracy prevails, and we get some base stability. The country has changed a little bit. We are now known as the French Republic, and we have a new leader in the form of Henry Frenay, who is a liberal in terms of ideology. Who is Henry Frenay? Well, historically, he supported the Vichy regime, but was disillusioned by the Nazi tendency of the Pétain regime, and so he moved to form the Mouvement de Libération Nationale, a French resistance group. He later became part of Charles de Gaulle's first provisional government after the war. While we overthrew the government, we need to make sure the officer corps of the new army is loyal to the values of an independent French Republic. Collapse of the Caucasus, another Reichskommissariat is crumbling away, and here comes the war declarations. There's always so many of these things popping up when they fall apart, and France is reborn. Civil war in Western Russia. After the ousting of the German occupiers, the different combatants lack a common enemy and are now fighting each other. Going through our focus tree, we're going to sideline the socialists, which will result in some ideologies losing popularity. Then purge the collaborators, which again will cause the loss of popularity in a couple ideologies. Without the supervision of Germany, the Romanian-Hungarian War begins over the ownership of Transylvania. Albanian Revolution, Communist Revolutionary in Verhoxa takes over the nation, and a small slice of Europe has been painted red. Replacing Adolf Hitler because he died, Martin Bormann is the new leader of the Greater German Reich. After the purging and sidelining, we're going to have our first elections. With the power of democracy, we can choose one of 3 options here: the conservatives, the liberals, or the social democrats. Let's keep the liberals in power. After all that turmoil and voting, let's make a new constitution, giving us more base stability and political power. Civil war in Germany. Factions are going to be fighting each other for the right to control the once terrifying empire, who is now facing an uncertain fate. 3 groups are fighting for the Reich, one led by Heinrich Himmler, one led by Erich von Manstein, and the last one is led by Martin Bormann. Let's try to get some support from the Toronto Accord and see if they want to help us. The Toronto Accord is a large faction which includes the United States, United Kingdom, occupied Japan, and a few small members such as the Republic of Iceland. Battling in the Baltics, and the Republic of Poland has appeared. It is a never-ending crisis for Germany, it seems. The Reich is fighting itself, and Eastern Europe has definitely changed in terms of its political landscape since the start of this playthrough. Taking advantage of the Civil War, the Czech resistance movement emerges and then fights everyone else involved in the wider conflict. Jumping into the rumble from the Alps is the Swiss Revolution, now doing their own part in the German Civil War. Not to be outdone by the Czechs and Swiss, the start of the Benelux Revolution occurs. Leader of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, is suddenly and suspiciously announced as dead, leaving the SS in a state of crisis. Von Manstein is removed from power in a coup by a group of officers claiming to be the moderate corps. Quebec votes for independence, and they did leave Canada, as you can tell on the left. The German Spring, leftists and pro-democratic rebels sheltered in the U-Bahn battleground formed the United Front. This one civil war has so many twists and turns in it. The Yanks are coming to Europe soon because they have declared war on a lot of countries, including the German Reich. That didn't take long at all. Only a few days after the war declaration, a nuclear weapon was detonated above Munich. The United Nations backs the anti-Nazi war, giving the green light to the United States and their Toronto Accord allies to do whatever. And with that said, a nuclear weapon is detonated above Germania. the capital of the Reich. Toronto Accord troops are landing in the Low Countries. We're just sort of spectating them since the faction chose not to support us. It's not looking good at all for the Germans here. Their enemies are just flooding into their country. Fascist Italy comes to an end in a bloodless coup despite attempts to stay in power by having Benito Mussolini resign and promises of multiple social and economic reforms. The Greater German Reich lost the war with the Toronto Accord, but let's see the new borders, and it's beautiful. Brings a tear to my eye. If only something so amazing could exist in real life. The video is going to stop here. If you enjoyed the mod, make sure to check it out in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment. Have an awesome day. I'll see y'all later.